Do I have sound now? Okay. All right. So it was piping through my microphone, but my microphone was muted. And now it is not. So that's good. I think that means I have microphone sound, so that's good. Yay. Sorry, so I was saying, I guess, while muted, bit of background on this piece. I started this last week on stream. Stephen, you helped me pick my reference. And I wanted to get this done before tackling other projects, so we're back at it this week. Hopefully I'll get this done on today's stream. This is watercolor on Aquabord. This palette that I'm using here is my Wild Curiosity palette from Roman Schmal Aquarius with several extra paints added. Sorry, I added 9 paints. There's a whole video about that, which somebody wants to go digging, can be linked down below in the chat, sorry. This is on Aquabord. I've been doing a little bit of a deep dive on painting surfaces. Having gotten kind of addicted to using Aquabord, I'm now obsessing over figuring out whether I can what similar surfaces I could use, because Aquabord is a little bit too bumpy for my tastes. I prefer a smoother finish, but on the other hand, I've been really enjoying the ability to work and rework and scrape away and play with highlights and really give watercolor, you know, it's got a little bit more of that like oil-like feel where I can sort of sculpt it and rework areas and layer without it becoming like, it still works in a watercolor light to dark way, without, you know, having to get into like gouache layers, which work differently. It's a very different experience from painting on paper, but I'm really quite enjoying it and wish I could do more like this, but I'm not thrilled with the idea of becoming dependent on pre-made panels that come in set sizes from a single manufacturer. And also I wish it was a little bit less bumpy. So apparently, if you do want to buy from the same manufacturer, Aquabord, which is made for painting with encaustic paints, which are, it's like a melted wax medium. Apparently they make a product called Aquabord that a couple of watercolor artists have tried, and based on some blog posts and pictures of their work, it seems like that might actually be exactly what I'm hoping for. But of course that doesn't solve I was hoping for not a packaged product from a American company. Like, I was hoping that that there was a surface that, you know, somebody else sells, or that I can get in different sizes, or that I can prepare myself, or have somebody prepare for me. Have somebody prepare for me would be ideal. Unfortunately, I may not get everything I want, but I did go on a deep dive about watercolor, well, painting surfaces, and traditional surface preparation, so the precursor to acrylic gesso that we use for oil and acrylic painting, the precursor to that was a primer made with traditionally rabbit skin glue or another form of animal protein, another form of gelatin, and then that would be mixed with various rock dust, chalk, calcium carbonate, or marble, or lead, or some other kind of absorbent powder, relatively absorbent, but also if you think about rabbit skin glue, that is gelatin. That is what we prime our watercolor surfaces with. So it's not actually surprising that Aquabord, which is made with an encaustic gesso, which is made to mimic a rabbit skin glue and marble dust or calcium carbonate mix. It uses a PVA instead of a rabbit skin glue, but apparently still has some of that absorbency. It's not really surprising that actually works with watercolor, and that answers a question that I had reading about old masters processes. Is every so often you'll hear about oil painters, old masters, painting watercolor underpainting, and that never made any sense to me, because if any of you have tried painting with watercolor on an acrylic gesso surface, it doesn't work. It just beads up, and that just seemed like a really frustrating, like, why would you do that? And I assumed that, well, yeah, it's like, now it's an acrylic gesso, but like, surely whatever the surface was behaved similarly. And well, the answer is no. Basically, it used to be that what we painted oil paintings on, or tempera or gouache or casein, behaved much more like, you know, paper. I mean, it wasn't paper, but it did have a similar level of absorbency as paper primed with gelatin. Well, you know, if you prime canvas with gelatin and rock dust, it behaves kind of like paper primed with gelatin and rock dust. Who knew? So, my next order of business, when I find energy, is going to be trying to replicate some panel surfaces that have the texture that I want. And that'll probably be me playing with gelatin. So, looking forward to that, but also not looking forward to that. My house is filled with cat hair and construction dust and really not made for making my watercolor surfaces in any way. I think that some of JMW Turner's work has a bit of a beat it up. Well, I mean, Turner is notorious for doing all sorts of, like, Turner is an interesting example because Turner is notorious for like absolutely bashing his work, just like leaving it in heaps, deliberately using pigments that were like not only not light fast, but like he'd use caustic pigments that burned through his surfaces, like, right. So like in the world of like, well, why does Turner's art look like it does? He had a very low regard for the value of his own work, which, you know, one can debate, but whether that's a positive or a negative, but I wouldn't necessarily attribute that to like the surface choices of the day, and more I would think that's more likely just Turner being Turner. Like, Turner would put out cigarettes on his, or like, yeah, he'd smoke and put out cigarettes on his own work. Like, it's not, he had absolutely no regard for the value of his own work. So it would not surprise me that he was doing things like trying water-based pigments on top of oil. Or that things look beaten up because they were improperly prepped, or maybe they, like, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure what pieces you're referring to, but I think Turner's sort of his own category. I had trouble finding the instances I'd found previously, but it was the likes of like Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Like, what are you talking about? You painted the, you know, underpaint the Sistine Chapel with watercolor? Like, are you crazy? Why? Why would you do this to yourself? And it wasn't like, you know, I wish I had the actual references, because it sounded crazy to me the several times that I read about it, and now looking it up, like when I'm looking for, you know, okay, let's talk about old masters underpainting with watercolor, because I'm sure I've seen this in a book or in a something, in a gallery tour, in a like, how did they work sort of thing. Now all you get is Reddit threads, discussions about why you shouldn't underpaint with watercolor, which, like, yes, thank you. I mean, because it's useless, because it's not fun, because it's going to beat up and just make a mess and make you sad. That's why. But I swear that I saw, that I've seen in the past, you know, stuff about old masters underpainting in watercolor that just like boggled my mind as a watercolor artist. Like, you know, even as somebody who loves working in watercolor, that particular sequence just doesn't make sense to me. What the hell were they doing? And I think part of the answer is that, yeah, because the surfaces that they were painting on are not the surfaces that we regularly see today. I tried a bit more stuff with PJ17. Ooh, tell me more. did not just completely mix the paints in the palette. Yeah, I mean, I think that, so if you use actual green gold PY 129, it has a like nearly identical mixing range to PY 150. You'll just need a little bit more of it to mix anything because it's slightly less tinting, but in general it has a nearly identical mixing range as straight PY 150. But visually it looks a little bit more, well, greenish. So does it, and a little bit more muted. So yes, I mean, if you add a little bit of PG-17, you'll get something that looks like a PY-129, and in fact, you know, plus or minus a little bit of granulation, if you mix them real good, you'll get something that's slightly more opaque, very, very slightly more greenish. You could at that point almost interchangeably use it with PY-129. It does beg the question of why a little bit, because you're just adding a little bit of opacity and dulling down a thing that already mixes the same pretty much. Yes. Yeah, I think that probably I'd see PG-17 shine is either something where you have a lot of really like flat, dusty subjects. So whether you're painting lichen or you're painting like cacti or succulents or something where you have like a powdery finish to them, so you're not going to have any sharp changes in chroma. Then that textural attribute of PG-17 where it is very, very high tinting and sort of it's not very bright, it's not very dark, it's not very, so it's going to just always create that sort of chromatic depression. So either if you're using a full gamut, it's going to be useful for painting things like cacti or certain kinds of lichen where that evenness is what you're looking for, where the like variations of a darker or more or brighter transparent watercolor are going to, you know, take away some of that that heaviness, that body that you have in say a cactus, which does have this very powdery even finish where it's not, you're not going to have any big you know, here's where the light is shining through the leaves and it's going to get like really bright yellow or something. That's not something that a cactus does. Or the other way I see using it is in a limited palette where you eliminate the bright color on either side. So either you say, no, there is no bright yellow, the brightest yellow in this palette is like a really mucky raw sienna, or you go the opposite direction, like a really mucky raw sienna, or yellow ochre, or you know, some kind of like where you're the closest thing you have to a yellow is really a brown. Then by comparison, your green looks like, well, yeah, that's what you would get if you mix a brown with whatever your blue is. And then you could even play with bright blues. You know, you could have a cobalt teal. That might be fun. Or go the opposite way and say, no, you are going to have all of these bright, transparent colors, but you're going to omit one of them. So you're going to omit, say, blue, and your closest thing to a violet is going to, or your closest thing to a blue is going to be a violet. No, I think it's an interesting challenge. I'm not sure that I'll get to it, you know, this week. But I will get to it. But yeah, I do see it as more of a like a limited palette sort of thing, or specific subjects. And I think, like, as a challenge, it's perhaps more interesting to do the limited palette angle than specific subjects. Like, if you're doing specific subjects, okay, well, why? Like nothing against using something that's, you know, using a color that's a perfect match for your specific subject, but except in cases where that choice is something really surprising. But like, I don't think that the idea that, oh yeah, well, you could paint, you know, dull lichen and cacti with a dull green is like, well, yeah, that's that. I don't know, that one seems obvious, and so I think the challenge is more interesting if you're using it in an unexpected way, and I think that probably playing with limited palettes is the way to be there. So, you know, there will be a video about this. I'm not sure when. I desperately need a washroom. I will be right back. yeah, as far as just incorporating PG-17 into a palette, I might just do that. Because I do paint a bunch of lichen and such. So I feel like, yeah, well, there's a place for that. I think similar to things that I have incorporated, like Potter's Pink, which is similarly opaque, granulating, unlike dull, and unlike PG-17, though it's very low tinting. Which means that it mostly gets used to shift other colors. And so, but I've used Potter's Pink. I have, in this palette, I have Titanium Buff. I've come to really love using cobalt in everything. Cobalt teal. So, in very, very small quantities, using PG-17 to create, some effects paints. Absolutely. I can see using it for certain kinds of lichen. I do think it has its uses there. I think the more interesting challenge is to actually use it as a a more core part of my palette, a more can this be, a primary mixing color? I mean, obviously it's not primary in the sense of like cyan, magenta, yellow, but can I actually use this in mixing? Can I actually use this beyond just, a novelty for one subject? I'm also interested in seeing it dulled down with reds and violets. Right, so that's another spot where I feel like, yeah, you get a lot of dulled down, like, rocks and sunsets, and this sort of thing that I've got going on here, where I've got I've got a Mars black that I've mixed in with all sorts of things, and there's some Potter's Pink action going on in here, some I want to say, it's not yellow ochre, what's this guy? Damn it. Paint in my palette. Wait, one moment, let me go find a color chart. My own color chart, because this is my own palette. apologies, Naples Yellow Deep, because apparently I don't remember what I put in my own palette. Okay, let's see. Over here. Scrub that out. And we'll scrub this out. Yeah. Let's see. What greens are in this work? I've got a convenience mix called Autumn Green. I have a, so that's sort of the base for a lot of these brighter green areas, which I've also mixed with PY150, of course. I also have used a couple of different blues. So I've got a cobalt sea blue it's called, but it's cobalt teal. And I think I threw in some Prussian blue at some point. And some indanthrene. And then I've also got a fair bit of, perylene green mixed in to mostly like the darks, actually dulling down the magenta a fair bit, but it pops up here and there. It's in this mix. And then there's also Naples yellow coming through. So a lot of it is just sort of like dulled mixes from my palette that are a mix of a bunch of things. But the pops of like bright color that you see are that autumn green, which is a convenience mix already, and some Aquarius orange, which is the new transparent orange, P0107. Did I get that right? Yeah. And quinacridone magenta are probably the brightest colors, and then there's a lot of other stuff that's mixed in to add texture and dull things down. So yeah, so like in that context, I could totally see throwing a PG-17 into a palette like this, and it would get dipped into probably relatively little because it's so intense. But like similarly, actually, the Naples yellow is quite an intense tinting thing for being, you know, it looks like an earth tone, but it is actually higher tinting. And so unless you want everything to be this dulled out yellow, you use it in small quantities. And so in that context, it's like, yeah, I could imagine using a PG-17. It would go into all sorts of neutralizing mixes and just create texture and weight to stuff. And so I might just do that. I might just throw it into one of these palettes. These days, a lot of my palettes, they're not planned in a like, oh, this is the palette that I always use. If I put paints into a palette, they are likely to get used. And so I rotate things around. And things that aren't necessarily my favorite, you know, they get used anyway because now they're in the palette, and the palette is handy, so that's what I use. It's funny because I can nerd out about like, oh, the qualities of this pigment and make all of these statements about my preferences, but when it comes down to it, when it comes down to actual painting, well, I just paint with what's in front of me. So I am trying to preserve some of these like purples and oranges and keep them in their like most, you know, brightest format. Playing up some of the contrast, like there's definitely some purple and orange in the reference, but I feel like, you know, playing it up a tiny bit. I find that photographs often, you know, just generic phone photographs, obviously, like photographers do all sorts of things with their colors. But often my photo references don't come out quite as vibrant, quite as contrasty as I see the world. So some of this is just re-infusing that. Now, of course, it is shaped by however the camera interprets colors, so I don't know that I saw, like, I may have seen this as more of a, like, a greenish or bluish tinted scene than this purpley orange that I see coming through in the photo references. But I'm just embracing that because, you know, it's the references I have, and playing up those contrasts. So where I see a little bit of purple, you know, I'm just gonna exaggerate it just a slight bit. Create that interest and contrast. I'm just gonna go check on so, yeah, what's interesting here with the Aquabord panel is I can just scuff away all kinds of, like if I want this lighter, I can just, oh, well, I'm just gonna make it lighter. And it's actually going back down to the surface, right, with just a little bit of scrubbing, so it's not a matter of like, oh, now there's extra layers that I need to worry about how I'm gonna lift them. Like, it's actually just going back to the surface. So it is like scraping away oil paint in that sense. Or you know, layering, but with a medium that sets, like what acrylic or oil paint or what have you. So yeah, this is fun. I think this is going to be a series of 4, actually, I mean, it belongs to 2 different projects. Because I'm working on a local urban trees project for exhibition later this year, and then next year or the year after I've got a thing in Northern Ontario. So I've got pieces from both, but I think I'm gonna make a series of these little like jewel box little paintings that I'm gonna make into cards. I think that it's gonna be really neat to have all these little square 6x6 pieces. I think I have 5x5 envelopes. So I have the makings of a card series here. Oh, move this back. I don't like what this is done over here. Let's go back to a brighter color. Go here. Did you get my answer about the greens? I think that's probably the last, I don't know, important thing that I said. Otherwise, just rambling. I don't know autumn green though. It is a convenience mix. It has PY 150 and here, I'll actually just get this out of the way briefly and get out a sketchbook and a PY 150, PR 122, and PG 36. So that is quinacridone, tiny bit of quinacridone magenta mixed with a Nicolazzo yellow, and PG 36 is phthalo green yellow shade. It granulates out into this lovely mix. Why does it granulate? Why does it granulate? That's a great question. PG 36. Did I write this wrong? What's granulating here? PG 36 is a phthalo green. What's the granulation? Question. It's possible that I miswrote it. That's possible. It's possible that it's a PG 26. Huh? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a PG 26 and it is. Then that would make it a cobalt green that's mixed in. And I put down PG 36, which is a phthalo. No? I don't know. But it is, sorry. Oh, I'm off screen. Here we go. Put me on screen. But it is a really fairly bright mid-green. It's got just enough of that PR 122 to, yeah, it's gotta be a cobalt in here. I must have just miswritten it. I think I kind of remember doing that, and that I did it over and over again. Like I printed it wrong on the color charts for this palette and had to go and cross them off. I'm pretty sure that that has a cobalt in it. But regardless, you could mix it from, if you didn't want the granulation, which, I mean, I have this color because I just really love the shade. It is a bright, bright, saturated, springy green. Yeah. Oh, it's called autumn green, but, you know, think spring. It's got just enough of that red to keep it from being, you know, cloying, to keep it from being too bright. But it then has, yeah, a little bit of granulation. I think that's a cobalt. Yeah, it is by Roman Schmal Aquarius. And yes, I think so. Yeah, okay. So you've confirmed. I just miswrote. I miswrote what the pigments were, and I didn't just do it once. I made a habit of it. So I made a video where I listed the wrong pigments in my mixing chart. I had another video where I selected paints for this pigment, for this palette, and I put it on here. And I wrote it wrong here. And I think on top of it, my palettes, my Wild Curiosity palettes, that I sell, when I printed the color chart for that on the back, I miswrote it on the back of my own thing and had to go and cross off. And then that was all last year, so I've forgotten because my memory is not what it used to be. Yeah, absolutely. Just mix colors if you have the ingredients for them. Especially if you're working out of tubes, which I like. I really do prefer to work out of tubes, and at that point, yes, it's super easy to just grab a little extra and just mix up whatever color you want rather than buying another convenience mix. In this palette, I mean, well, for starters, when I was testing things out for this palette, I was just using paints that I had, because I have too many paints, because I get sent paints to test, right? So it's not, I don't really have to buy my own paints, but I was designing, like, choosing paints to put in a custom palette, And when thinking about this palette, I was thinking, well, a lot of people, when they're like, this was in the context of prepping workshops, which I do want to get back to. Had another sort of health stumble after that, and the whole thing has been on ice. But we're good now. But the idea was, okay, well, you know, I teach, and when teaching, people will ask to, oh, I want to work with the same palette as you. I want to buy your palette, which is great. But I kind of wanted to give people something that, you know, isn't a bunch of duplicates of something that they've already got. So I wanted to balance, okay, well, this can this be practical for somebody who is just buying their first watercolor palette ever? And can this also be an interesting mix for somebody who probably has purchased, you know, a watercolor palette or 10 before, but, you know, just wants to, for my workshop, to be working with my choices. And so I did want to incorporate a couple of fun convenience mixes to really showcase what Roman Schmal does. And so I do have that convenience green, which I think is an addition. Yeah, I believe so. I believe this is in the original palette. Sorry. And also in the original palette is Ocean Blue, which is it's very similar to a PB16, but what it is a PB15-3 mixed with this Naples Yellow Deep. The yellow shifts the hue, but also the value in chroma, which the magenta knocks back a little. Yeah. So if you were to mix just yellow and like a cobalt green with a Nicolazzo yellow, you would have like a very like eye-searing green. Like it would be neon. And you don't, you know, that's not something that really, I don't want to say it doesn't show up in nature. It does, but only in small pops, right? So if you're trying to paint a tree and you're trying to paint all the foliage, like, you might get some pops of that, like, neon green in places, but it's not going to be over the whole tree. Like, over the whole tree, you're going to get a much more muted effect. And so just a little bit of magenta to just knock it back so that it's still a bright green, but it's not eye-searing, makes it more useful as a general purpose mixing green. I don't, in finished paintings, tend to use a whole lot of pre-mixed green. I mean, I did deliberately here because I wanted to play with it. But I would more frequently just mix it. Just throw some of the paints on the palette. But I do have to say, for like being out sketching, if you're out in the woods and you're sketching a scene, it is nice to have a, like, put it in the pan, you know, drop a brush in the pan and start brushing it out, sort of shade available. this up. Come on. Come. Let's go with me. I'm talking to my paint like I talk to my dog. Come on, let's go. Let's go with me. Come on. Come on, Amber. Let's go. I talk to the paint mostly when I am using some gravity. Go on, move it, drop. There you go, run. Not there. No, bad paint. Well, I've been at this for an hour and a half, and it feels like I've achieved nothing. That's great. I love these productive days where I get absolutely nothing done. No, I guess I have done things. This part of the process sometimes can be a little bit. I think actually mostly on stream, so different parts of the process feel. It's like the early parts of the process, I feel like they go faster on stream. Right? It's like, oh yeah, 3 hours have gone by and I've filled up, most of my painting with initial layers. It feels like I've done something. I've just been chatting away, but it has been filling. Whereas this part of the process is it can actually just run away from me when I'm in a flow state, but it's difficult to get into that sort of, meditative on my own state when I'm streaming. So maybe that's, but on the other hand, it's people want to see finished. People want to see a artwork getting finished, right? Not I got it to some mess in the middle. It's balancing, because that's the stage that I really I don't want a camera on me. I don't want to whatever. Okay, let's get some more of this lighter green on there. Yeah, let's throw this all over here and all over there, and then I will pick this up. Yeah, pick it up, pick it up. And then, no, that's not what I want to use. I want to use something like thinner brush. Sorry. I want to get some more. Let's get a little bit more here. I don't like how that's aligned. What if I... There we go, that's better. Okay, take that. Extend that way. Hi, Nicole. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. I am having fun with this. The reference for this is on my Discord channel. The link is in the video description. If you want to see the photo I'm painting from. So this is a photo I took myself. Actually a series of photos, but I'm mostly using one. I'm in Canada, Ontario. This is from Petersburg, Ontario. This video, for some reason, says the Canadian North Woods. Actually, I know exactly the reason. It's because I copied the video attributes from a previous video where I was painting a very similar piece. I'll actually bring it out. So in some earlier live streams, I had painted this, which is a very similar piece, but this is from Northern Ontario, off of Lake Superior, and this is what I'm working on now. This is from Petersburg, Ontario, which is like southwestern Ontario. And this is watercolor on Aquabord. There will be a tiny bit of ink. There's very little now, but I will be adding some ink and also scratching in some brighter highlights. In a little while, I'm almost done with painting, but as you can see, there's still a few little areas that need to be filled in and quite a bit of deepening and shadow work that still needs to be done. Thank you. Take a look. I need some inspiration for my nature painting. Well, I find the best inspiration is nature. But absolutely, go ahead and check out my Discord. You know what? I'm gonna add an extra layer here. So I'm painting on Aquabord right now, which I think I mentioned. And Aquabord has the interesting attribute that it can be completely lifted right up. So you can go back to just the white of the board pretty easily, and then you can also scrape away highlights. And in this painting I'm doing both. What am I doing? I'm adding paint right back where I scraped it away. Okay, that's clearly I'm having a great day. We'll just there for a moment. And, oh right, I do want paint there, but I want it darker. I want the deep shadow that comes in underneath this and underneath there, over here. Like so. Then I want some more of this here. Let's go here, here, there. Let's get some more bright green in there. So Nicole, what are you up to this fine Friday? Weird. Huh. Odd. Looking at my reference, and there's a twig over the main subject, beyond the bounds of where I'm actually painting. That seems to just be discontinuous. It's like a weird camera optical illusion where it just looks like the twig just ends and then starts up again. Okay, and now I need to find a couple of, that one's working. Where's my non-working pen? So I've experimented with a bunch of different ways to scrape away highlights on this Aquabord, and one of my favorites is using a very fine pen that no longer works. There we go. Found it. And then find some of these highlights there and get some of these highlights. Sorry, am I out of focus? Let me just go to, I don't like where this focus is. One moment. Take that and focus, focus, focus. Okay, there we go. Here. There we go. And then I want to just get this out here. And then if I take a very similar pen that does work, let's see, over here, then I can add in my these ones sometimes run a little bit smoother on this stuff. Yeah, okay, I'll use this. So I get in all of my detail pretty much with watercolor, but I find that adding just a little bit of a consistent line creates a sort of like graphic, punchier look, because the watercolor has this sort of soft flowiness where even the darks sort of flow into the lighter colors, having this sort of graphic edge to some of the work makes it pop out just a little bit more, makes it makes it illustrated in a, I think in an appealing way. Appeals to me. I don't know what other people like, but yeah, let's try this then. I think my dog is coming up to tell me that it's time to go walkies. Well, she's coming up to tell someone it's time to go walkies. We'll see who she chooses today. Sometimes she decides that I'm just too pathetic and she needs to get my husband, but it is getting to be about walkies time, and generally that's my job, so I may get called off for dog duty. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I think I'm actually heading off as well, so this looks like a decent closing point. I'm at about 2 hours now, so I will, probably be back on next week. I am gonna have to take a few weeks off coming up soon, but should be available next week. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.